Okay guys, so we're going to go over your assignment from today. So first thing it says is that we're given angle 1 is congruent to angle 2 and AB is congruent to DC. And then our goal is to prove that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle blank, and we'll have to figure out what that blank is. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and star my easy points. Okay, so the first thing they tell me is angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. And the only reason I know that is because it was given. We know that AB is congruent to DC because it was given. And our goal is to show that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle, and I don't know what that is yet, so I'll get there in just a minute. So now that I have my givens down, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mark up that angle 1 and angle 2 are congruent. I'm going to mark that AB and DC are congruent, and then I need to look for hidden information. So remember, our hidden information are vertical angles or a side that both of our triangles share. So if I'm looking, I see two triangles. I see this ABC, and then I also see this kind of lower triangle. They both share this line AC. So I need to write that AC from my triangle ABC is going to be the same as my AC from my other triangle. And we talked about how if we have the same thing on both sides of our congruent symbol, then our reason is going to be reflexive property of equality. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that up. So now I like to skip over to the reason first before I do the statement. So if I start where there's no markings on one of my triangles, I hit a side, then an angle, and then a side. So I'm going to write SAS for side, angle, side. So triangle ABC is congruent to triangle. A has one little marking, so it's going to go with C in my other triangle. B is between my side with one marking and my side with no marking, so between one marking and no marking is D. And then process of elimination leaves me with A. So here is the correct proof for this, and then I'm just going to write CDA up here. Okay, number 2. Kind of the same diagram. This one is a little different. So we have AB is parallel to DC. So AB is parallel to DC. Our reason is given. Should probably star my easy points. Star and star. Okay, here we go. So the other thing they tell me is that AB is congruent to DC, and my goal is to prove that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle I don't know yet. Okay, so I know that AB is congruent to DC because they gave it to me. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mark that I know AB is parallel to DC. So remember, parallel is our triangles. And I also know that AB is congruent to DC, so it's also going to have a hash mark. So now we haven't really talked about this, but we have a special angle pair. So if I look here at this stuff that I'm kind of outlining in red here, these are parallel lines. This is a line that goes through them, so that's transversal. And so angle 1 and angle 2 are going to be congruent because they're one of our special angle pairs. And they're what we call alternate interior angles. Okay, so I know that. Now I can look for hidden information. Again, this has hidden information. Both of our triangles share this side, B or AC. So I'm going to say that AC is congruent to AC, and that again is reflexive, property of equality. So now if I start where there's no markings, we hit a side, an angle, and a side. So side, angle, side, and triangle A. A goes with C, D, and A. So triangle C, D, A. So here's this one. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So again, we have kind of the same diagram, but we're proving different things. So this time, we want to prove that angle D is congruent to angle B. And we have that we're given AD is congruent to BC. So our reason is given. And DC is congruent to AB, which is also given. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that stuff up. So AD is the same as BC, and DC is the same as AB. Now I want to look for any hidden information. I have hidden information that AC is congruent to AC because they both share that side, and that's reflexive, property of equality. Okay, so now I know this last one has to be CPCTC because I am finding pieces of my triangle and showing that they're congruent. So now I'm going to mark that AC is congruent to AC. So we have markings on side, side, side. So my reason is going to be side, side, side. And I'm going to say that triangle ACD is congruent to triangle A is between 1 and 3. So I'm going to look at between 1 and 3 would be C. And then C is between 3 and 2. So 3 and 2 would be A. And then B. So here is our proof for this guy. Okay, next one, number 4, we have angle A is congruent to angle B, given. We have that AC is congruent to BD, which is given. So we have AC is congruent to BD, angle A is congruent to angle B. Okay, and then we have that we want to prove. So if we're looking here, we're kind of talking about this triangle that I'm going to outline in purple because it says AE here. And then we have this angle, or this triangle, in red because it says BE. Now if I'm looking at these two triangles, they kind of overlap, and they overlap and share this angle E. So if they share this angle E, I'm going to say that angle E is congruent to angle E, and I'm going to say reflexive property. Now this one actually should have another line, so I'm going to go ahead and mark that up. So I want to look, I'm looking at my red triangle here. There's a lot of markings, but I want to start where there's a side and an angle with no markings. So I'm going to start here. This side doesn't have any markings and this angle doesn't have any markings. So we hit a side, an angle, and an angle. So you could have side, angle, angle, or you might have written angle, angle, side, and said that triangle ACE is congruent to triangle. A has 1, B has 1. C is over here, so that would go with D, and then E. So now I need to add one more. I didn't give you enough boxes. Okay, one more. So then we have AE is congruent to BE by CPCTC. And here is our proof. Okay. Next one. This one looks kind of like an hourglass. So we have our first easy point, that angle A is congruent to angle E, given. We have that BC is congruent to DC, and that is given. So we have angle A is congruent to angle E. BC is congruent to CD. And I only needed one mark on each of those, but I put 2. I don't know why. And then my hidden information, angle 1 is congruent to angle 2 because they are vertical angles. Now if I'm looking at my markings, I start where there's a side and an angle with no marking. So I can start right here and I hit a side, an angle, and an angle. So I'm going to write SAA, or you may have come up with AAS. So I have triangle. ABC is congruent to triangle. A has 1, E has 1. B is between 0 and 2. So between 0 and 2 would be D. And then process of elimination leaves us with C. So now I have that AB is congruent to ED by CPCTC. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Last one is another hourglass looking guy. Sorry, that was a little shaky. So we have C bisects AE, and C is the midpoint of BD. Those are both given. So I'm going to write that. And this one's going to need extra lines. I didn't give you enough lines, so this one's going to need some extra ones too. So we have C bisects AE. So if C bisects AE, that means that AC is the same length as CE. And that is definition of bisects. Okay, C is the midpoint of BD, so that means that BC is the same as CD, and that is the definition of midpoint this time because they use the word midpoint. I have to keep the same vocabulary. So then if I look for hidden information, we know that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Our reason is vertical angles. Now I need 2 extra lines here. So 6 and 7, 6 and 7. So I'm going to do my triangle reason first. So side, angle, side. So side, angle, side. And so I can say triangle ABC is congruent to triangle. A is between 0 and 1. E is between 0 and 1. B is between 0 and 2. D is between 0 and 2. And then C. and angle A is congruent to angle E by C, P, C, T, C. So here is the last of the problems that you had to do. So hopefully this made a little bit more sense. Remember, tomorrow or Thursday, depending on what day I have you, you will be taking a test over some of these triangle proofs. So hold on to this so that you can use it on your test tomorrow or Thursday, depending on which day that you have it. So make sure you stick this in your notebook, and make sure you have your fat white proof packet and you have your blue vocabulary. Okay, see you tomorrow.